Thank you. We have many connections to our land, and one of the main connections to our land is the fact that we have stories that connect us. And I'd like to share one of the creation stories a bit today. Agalabem, a greedy, selfish creature, kept back all the water in the world so that the rivers stopped flowing and the lakes dried up and the people everywhere were dying from thirst. As a last resort, they sent a messenger to ask him to give the people water, but he refused. And he only gave the messenger a drink from the water that he had washed himself. But this was not enough to satisfy even the thirst of one. Then the people began to complain. Some were saying, "I'm as dry as a fish. I'm as dry as a frog. I am dry as a turtle. I'm as dry as a beaver," and so on. For they were on the verge of dying of thirst. At last, a great man, Gelowiska, the good man who is the bearer of great truth, he was sent to Agalabem to tell him to release the water for the people. Again, Agalabem refused, saying that he needed it himself to lie in. Then Gelowiska cut down a tree so that it fell on top of the monster and destroyed him. The body of the tree became the main river, Wollostok, and the branches of the tree became the tributaries, while the leaves became the ponds and the headwaters and the streams and the brooks. And that is the creation story from our people that goes back thousands and thousands of years in this land.
Leslie?
Yeah.
I'm just going to pass them over. Thank you. So I wasn't prepared to make a statement today, but I will tell you that as a landowner in Redhead, in St. John, I'm very concerned about the impact and the extreme danger of the proposed pipeline terminating right in my neighborhood, where we have no escape route if there should be a disaster. Particularly my neighbors who live on Anthony's Cove Road, where they would have to drive up past or walk up past the proposed tank farm, or else escape by water or be rescued by helicopter if it wasn't too late. People are, complaining that, well, why are we stopping jobs from being created? My concern is if there's a disaster in the area that polluted the water, the Bay of Fundy especially, what would happen to all of the fisheries jobs? What would happen to the tourism jobs? And those are thousands of jobs. This is far too risky. Far, far too risky. I'm raising my granddaughter, and my daughter is living with me with her son. They're aged 2 and 4, and they have a right to clean air, clean water. We're on a well, and they have a right to fresh water to drink. And my granddaughter that is growing up in my house, her father is a pediatric cancer survivor. That puts her at greater risk. We have cancer survivors living in our community. We have people living in our community who have respiratory disorders and diseases. These people have a right to fresh air, clean land, and fresh water. And we have a right to not be worried about whether there's going to be a big explosion. With all of the risks of the chemicals being exposed into the air to us. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I'd just like to add, one of the other asks for National Energy Board has been the lateral pipeline route from Redwood to the Irving refinery. And we have yet to be provided maps of that lateral pipeline. If Irving is, as they say, going to process some of this, it really makes you wonder how they're going to do that without a pipeline between the two facilities. Marilyn.
I'm thrilled to be able to join together with the other members of the group today. I want to talk about the Bilal Bay watershed. It's where I live. The Bilal Bay watershed, it's a map behind us. It's one part of the watershed sector that the proposed pipeline plans to come through, or is drawn to come through. The watershed is 30,000 hectares of forest farmland, beautiful farmland, and recreation area. There's some small villages there and vibrant communities. The area, that watershed, is full of feeder streams. It's an area where it's very low-lying, has a lot of the feeder streams that come into the bay, which feed then into the St. John River. It's the Bilal Bay is tidal. It's very subject to flooding during freshet season, and has floods regularly, and the residents there, we manage and work with that. The last fall, I think on September 30th, was the area where there was those dramatic washouts, the large rainstorm, I think it was on September 30th, where we lost a number of our bridges and just huge washouts into that area. That's the same area where just alongside where the pipeline is proposed to come through. For people from away, I would say, people from away out of New Brunswick, they look at that watershed area where I live, likely would see that as kind of open, undeveloped, quite rural area. Ripe for maybe putting that an easy route to put a pipeline through. What my understanding is from the last draw of the route was that 18 kilometers of that pipeline will cross across the Bilal watershed. 18 kilometers of it through that whole feeder stream area. My understanding also is that if there was a spill, a leak anywhere in that pipeline crossing the Bilal watershed route, it would affect the bay, no matter where that is, because of the nature of that watershed. Also, if there was a leak, because of the shut-off valve system, the way it works is that there would be, on average, 5 million liters of bitumen oil that would be would leak into that watershed. Above Bilal Creek, about halfway through that watershed area, it would be about 8 million. Below, it's estimated to be around 3 million, and that's based on just estimates of the information we've been able to pull. So on average, it'd be about 5 million liters. And that 5 million liters is about the same as what that spill was that we were so alarmed with in Alberta. So clearly risk there. So who am I? I'm a nurse. I retired as a professor, but I am still practicing as a nurse. But I live in Cars, and that's why I'm here. I live in Cars, which is on the edge of Bilal Bay. My daughter will be the 4th generation to live on Bilal Bay. So I feel like I have the bay in my DNA. Before my family came to Bilal Bay, the Aboriginal peoples worked and lived through that area. But since that time, my family and my neighbors have built and live in that area. So whilst people from away may see this as an area that is undeveloped and, ripe for development, we see it ripe for development, but we see it ripe for development for New Brunswickers and for our generations and for the development that is good and nurturing for our environment and our people. One thing about the Bilal Bay area is the recreational area. The St. John River has so much potential in terms of developing tourism-wise. But in the Bilal Bay area, it's much like lots of other maritime families. Many of people have moved away or live in other parts of the province. But we gather there, generations of people will come, families gather there. I can't tell you the number of people who come to Bilal Bay and boat or on their cottages, come back to the farms with. So while it's like a sleeping giant when you think in terms of the government, thinking that not many people live in this rural area, there are actually many, many people who actually feel very strong ties to the Bilal Bay itself. Strong ties, and can't believe that this is an area where a company would plan to put a pipeline through, particularly a bitumen-filled pipeline through. So why am I concerned beyond the straight risk in terms of a possible leak? I have been stunned with, as I said, my background is nursing. I'm not an environmentalist. I'm just a regular citizen who reads and goes to information, and this is my backyard. I've gone to the open houses that TransCanada has held. I read the Telegraph. I am on the internet. I've looked at the information that was available through our watershed group. The information is very hard to fathom through, very hard to sort through. I've gone to the open houses, asked questions about, tell me about the bitumen, what the mix of, how do you make that dilute, what would happen in terms of a spill. I've asked questions, I've submitted questions, politely following the process. I haven't had one answer. I've attended three open houses, talked to Pam McKay, sorted through, told them I hadn't gotten an email response, told them I hadn't had a written response. I have had not one response, which if you're looking to build trust and build network with the community, clearly you need to give good information, you need to answer questions, and it's basic, non-technical information. The other is that the Telegraph Journal,
St. John Irving paper.
It's almost like propaganda. It's all like, what's wrong with these people? Why don't we get on board? We need to listen to McKenna. We need to do this. We need to, all of this. And it's like, well, that could be. That could well be. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the real risk. Let's talk about how this will work. Why does it need to go through this particular watershed? A watershed that huge has a large lot of experience with freshet flooding, as well as the washouts. Why would any reasonable company do that? It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm concerned because I really question, just as Mark says, the trust issue. Can I trust a company that doesn't answer my questions, that treats me in a paternalistic way, that doesn't give basic information, the maps, doesn't come and have any kind of interaction with the local community? I think not. So what I've been pleased to connect with the Council of Canadians and am keen to have these town halls so we can actually begin to get people in our area together to ask questions No, and yes, I'm all for development and for jobs, but I'm also all for our livelihood. And nobody's gonna look after us. Nobody's going to pay attention to our concerns unless we start taking ownership of them and speak up. Thank you.
Don?
Yeah, I was here to talk about water mostly. I'd start off briefly with the Miramichi, okay, because my interest has been, I have fished the southwest Miramichi and the Nashwauk River systems for years and years and years. A lot of people don't even know, I think, that the pipeline will cross the south branch of the southwest Miramichi and will also cross a number of tributaries of Lake Brook and Lake Brook itself and the Taxis River, which runs into the southwest Miramichi at Taxis River near Boys Town. It runs through the woods, all of this distance from Lake Brook, for example, right to Boys Town. If you had a spill that occurred in the late afternoon or early evening up in that area, Lake Brook in particular, maybe even up in Southwest Branch, it would reach Boys Town before anybody could see it. Now their leak detection system, the pipe can leak 1.5% to 2% before their automatic leak detection system kicks in. 1.5% of 1.1 million barrels is 16,500 barrels. 2% is 22,000 barrels of this bitumen, diluted bitumen. So a lot of stuff could get down to Boys Town before anybody would see it. Their secondary leak detection system, and this is clear throughout the province, is they fly the pipeline. Typically, they would like to do it within 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. But a maximum could be 3 weeks. Okay, and I have a document, I can't give you the link to it here, but that shows that 37 million liters at the 1.5% can come out of that pipeline before it's detected by somebody seeing it on the ground or whatever. So this is a terrible, terrible disaster. And the Southwest Miramichi is still a good salmon river. There are sporting camps over on it. There are private land. There are people who make their living on that river. Now, you may be more interested in the St. John here, I think, but I thought I should bring that up because it's an important waterway in the province, okay? As far as the St. John goes, I fished the Nashwauk, and I know of a number of tributaries. I fished Cross Creek, for example, out there above Stanley, and we were out to Arnold Brook. I knew about Arnold Brook and McGivney Brook and 5 Mile Brook and so on, okay, and there are others. All of these little brooks have tributaries. All the tributaries in these brooks run into the Cross Creek. The Cross Creek runs into the Nashwauk. The Nashwauk runs in, and everybody around here knows exactly where the Nashwauk runs into the St. John. Now, as far as other tributaries of the St. John, I don't know a great deal about them. The mapping is very poor, as Marilyn said. But I know Green River runs into it, and I know Tobic River runs into it. And I thought I had another one here. No, I guess those are the others I know. But there are other areas, okay? Cambridge Narrows is an area, for example, it's a beautiful spot and a big, big bunch of water down there, eh? And also Grand Lake. That's another huge body of water that this pipeline can leak into. Now, I spent an awful lot of time digging out all of this information. I dug the coordinates out of TransCanada's previous filing for every crossing in New Brunswick, and there are 281 water crossings in the province. So loaded it into Google Earth, so now I can draw it for the whole province in smaller pieces, so you can. But the problem is, you don't know, you can't see the brooks well enough to know where they go, okay? And there is a, SNB has map available, it's called the New Brunswick Atlas, which you can get at, which is like topographical maps, and it has roads and all of this and water and all of that that you can look at. And you can zoom in on that and you can sort of follow stuff. But still very, very difficult to know exactly what's happening now. So we can leak anywhere in this pipeline. Like that was 37 million. I worked out the worst case, which was 3 weeks undetected at 2%, 73 million liters could leak. Their third, I didn't mention the third mechanism that they have passed after the flying. That's people seeing it or smelling it. And here you are out in the middle of the woods, miles from a leak. A leak starts here and it's miles to where anybody might see it in a good part of the year. So basically you're at the mercy. If there's a leak in a pipe, and there's lots of pipeline leaks all over the place. Now the other thing about this stuff is that a lot of people don't realize, and they will try and deny, is that this stuff sinks eventually in water. I've got evidence of it from a paper that's published on the National Energy Board website. They mix it with these diluents, they call them. It could be propane, could be various other, all kinds of tanes or thanes and so on. And they mix this stuff in it and they heat it to get it a through pipe, because if you don't do that, it's like heavy tar. You couldn't get it through the pipe. So they mix it with these diluents and they're volatile. So when it leaks, give it a day or so, or 2 or more, depending on outdoor temperature and so on, and these evaporate. And then what's left sinks and gets in the sediment and the rocks and so on the bottom of the rivers. So we had that to face, on top of the fact that a leak is hard enough to clean up when it's worked up on the top of the. And if you want to find out and see what it's like, Google or YouTube Kalamazoo. That's all you've got to do is look at Kalamazoo. Enbridge had a leak there. It's been a total disaster. I think it was 2010. They spent over $1 billion already trying to clean it up, and the stuff is still in the mud and the sediment in this river, the Kalamazoo River. So that sort of summarizes what I've got. I had a document. Oh yeah, I did this. One more little thing. I had a document here, 2 documents. It took me a lot of time to find all of the information in the initial filing. I don't know how long I spent rooting through their stuff because it's poorly indexed. And I finally found what I was looking for. And guess what? They just filed their new documents. They overwrote all of the old documents. All of the links that I had figured out in order to get to this information are gone. I got to go now look through half again or 2/3 again as much information to try and find information that I'd already found and probably hasn't changed, or at least most of it. So I was going to give out the document, but I can't. It's broken. They broke it yesterday. Okay, that's one. I wondered why the day before I couldn't access the information on the, because I was checking to make sure these links all work, and I couldn't access the site at all. And then yesterday, or this morning, when I got there, they filed all these new documents, and so a piece of the stuff I got broken. They broke it. My time's not worth anything to them, I guess. So that covers what I wanted to say, other than it would be very helpful if people right from the Quebec border, right clear down to the mouth, or to wherever the pipeline ends in Redhead, if people along that river would, there's a link on Conservation Council. I can put, like, if all you people are on Facebook or whatever, I can post on my page a couple of links. The link to the NB Atlas and the link to the map that the Conservation Council made that has the coordinates for all of the various river crossings. I can post that, but it would sure be a big help if we could consolidate information by people who knew the lay of the land in various places going down. Like, I know the area where what I was talking about. Like, I live in Stanley, like I say, so I know that area pretty well. But it'd be helpful if people who knew the other areas documented some of this stuff. And then we could get a better picture of the damage and where the damage could be all over the whole length of the pipeline. So basically, that's, I guess, about everything I do. Well, everything I dare say.
Hey, Mark, before this
Here,
tape,
I'll just make closing comments.
Mark, before this tape goes out there, the memory, I just wanted to ask everybody, he's talking about water. The time we went in St. John at a Trans-Canada home house, open house, and we were taking pictures of the maps of the pipeline, and you were escorted out. We weren't allowed to take pictures to see where this pipe is gonna go through. You got a comment on that?
Yeah, and do you remember the two pictures I took?
Yeah.
The first map were the tributaries leading into the southwest branch of the Miramichi, one of the premier salmon rivers in the world. The second map were some of the tributaries that the proposed pipeline is crossing that lead directly into the Nashwauk River. And I told them I was concerned about the drinking water supply at the mouth of the Nashwauk that the city of Fredericton accesses and feeds our aquifers. And that's when they escorted.
Why would
me
they
out.
don't want us to take pictures?
And remember, they told us that those maps were available on the web.
Yep.
And that is a lie. And I don't know. I mean, it's we've seen it firsthand. The citizens of this province trying to gain easy access to the pipeline route, and we failed.
They were escorted out by the police.
Right. Right. I really see the Harmony Project. I'd just like to provide a few closing comments. The Harmony Project really is the peoples in this province taking command of this situation. The timeline has just been announced by the National Energy Board for the Energy East review process. And we have panel meetings starting as early as September this fall here in this province. And TransCanada, the province of New Brunswick, National Energy Board have basically run out of time. The citizens of this province, the indigenous peoples who we share this land with, we have to take control of the situation. The Harmony Project I see as a celebration of the intelligence, the resilience, and the history of this amazing part of the world. And Anglophones, Francophones, we make up a small percentage, maybe 2 or 3% of the human history of this province. The Harmony Project embraces the huge history, time immemorial. And so we have the creation Tree of Life on the Harmony Project poster. The artwork we're using is from the indigenous culture. And I think that all of us, the Anglophone, the Francophone, the indigenous communities, are coming together in harmony to show that we are all connected by this huge, vast water basin. It's the one of the largest watersheds on the eastern seaboard. And it's the worst possible location for 42-inch tar sands pipeline. And so, how do we celebrate it? Dawn has uploaded the coordinates of the 280 water crossings. We will be going into, starting next week, we'll be going into the 4 communities. We have town hall meetings scheduled in Chipman on Tuesday, Belle Isle on Wednesday, Hampton on Thursday, and St. John on Friday. We're going to be doing site visits during the day, and we're going to start painting trees on public lands and on private lands where we get the okay. And we are celebrating the wealth of water. We're blessed with all this water and the beauty of our farmland, of all of the land in this province. And I really, because we have to do this, I think it highlights the failures of the government and of TransCanada to provide even the basic information. Don and we asked for spill modeling for the Nashwauk River. How long would it take a spill of bitumen to get into the city of Fredericton's drinking water supply? And TransCanada has not been forthcoming with any of that information. We've been asking repeatedly for a year. So I really see the Harmony Project as citizens and the peoples in this province coming together and saying, this is our land, we share this with all the peoples, and TransCanada and the governments have no right to come in and threaten our watersheds with a tar sands pipeline.